Hello and welcome to another look at Animate. You can tell I've changed things around a bit. So just to go through this, I've see the timeline. I've got standard, medium, and we're going to be looking at span-based selection as well. Maybe we'll start with that. I was just looking at the timeline. So the way span-based selection works is actually pretty cool. So in the past, you would have frame-based selection. So you see, I'd just be able to click on each frame. But what this has got is span-based selection. So say we have a situation where we've got a selection here, right? Now, in the past, we would be able to click on a frame, and that would be cool. But with span-based selection on, something actually pretty different happens. And what that is, it actually selects the whole section there. And that's pretty useful, right? Because what you can do is you can have it selected, and then we can just hold down Alt, and then we can copy and paste the frames really, really quick. So that is actually really useful. Not only that, but there's also another way of doing it. If you hold down Control and say we wanted to select, you sort of like to select the inverse of what you want. So say we wanted to select this piece here, then we're able to do it. So that's the way that you can actually select frames by holding down Control. And I think also, let me just check another thing as well, which is that I think if you hold down Control, you might be able to do Control and Shift. So if you do Control, let's do Control Shift. So yeah, if you do Control Shift, it lets you actually select a range of frames, which you can then use Alt, and you can get those extra frames. So really cool ways of like managing the timeline. You can also obviously do this sort of stuff, and just in general make, this is like stuff you could do in Premiere and stuff like that. Okay, so they're cool features about the timeline, which wasn't really aware of before, but we're learning new stuff all the time. Another really cool thing that I found recently, say you've got like text, right? So we'll put a text box here, say hello, okay? Yep. Okay, again, we'll just center it, like I like to do. Now what we can do is this button here invokes the layer depth panel. So check out what happens when you move this this line here. You can actually change the depth of it. So this seems like it's a really powerful thing. I think it's also connected to the camera tool as well. When you use the camera tool, it also does the same sort of thing. So I'm going to be checking that out in another video because I only just recently found that out. I'm going to do a bit more research into that, but I've got some other topics prepared for today anyway. Let's just remove this camera layer. Okay, now I want to talk about this view menu here. I'm going to do snapping, and we're also going to have snap to pixels. So if you just looked at the snapping menu, I went through a bit fast. We've got snap align, guides, pixels, objects. So we should be quite a lot. It should be pretty good. So if we create a box here, this is a box with no. It's just a fill. There's no line on the outside, no border of it. So we should be able to snap it, and you can see that when we put it near the lines, it's sort of snapping to. You can see extra lines appear there. There's another way to do it as well, which is if you get the guides here, you can do edit guides. Now you can't actually edit the guides unless you've got the rulers on, I believe. So if you put the rulers on, what you do is you hold it down from here, and so for instance we could just do here, and then we could do like another guide, go from the ruler here to say, I'm not being exact here, and then what we can do is we can actually snap this object. You can see it's snapping to the top there, and what's important with this is where you actually have your the box held down. So for instance, if we want to snap here into this corner, if I hold it from this corner, you're going to see it's not going to it's not going to start snapping. It's hard to obviously because you can't see how I'm holding the keys, but you might be able to see. So I'm holding it from that corner. Now if I hold it from this corner, let's have a look and see what happens. Well, you can actually see the difference. So you can see it's to do with where it's very important that where you actually hold the shape, right? If I hold it from this corner, it will snap to that top line, and it will snap to this quadrant here, but not to this quadrant. You can actually get it as well a little. Yeah, it won't snap to this quadrant. So that's another important thing to realize in this section. Okay, so say we've got a shape here. Another thing as well that I didn't actually point out, if we have a keyframe here, you can use the comma and the full stop keys to go back and forth as well. Okay, so if we have a shape here, there's a couple of things that we can do with it. Let's do a shape tween. So we're going to work at all the different types of motion tweens. So a shape tween essentially lets you move a shape, and also you can change the shape of the shape. So say we have a keyframe here. What we can do is we can then move this shape to somewhere else, and then you can do a shape tween. You create shape tween. And if you look at it, you're going to see it's going to go on a path there. So that's going to let you go through the shape, right? And one of the cool things you can do about this is if you say you have a different, one of the keyframes, you can actually change the shape of it. So for instance, say, and you can do whatever shape you want. So you could really, really change the shape a lot. And then when you run the animation, you see the shape is going to change massively. Let's not, before we do the keyframe, remember when we do a keyframe, we're creating whatever shape is here. So we're going to do this, and I want to just try to change it to something else, which is create object. So now it becomes a drawing object. So this is not like a normal object because it doesn't appear in the library. But let's have a look. So I believe, right, if we do a keyframe here, if we try and do like another type of tween, like say the classic tween, it will still say it's not a symbol, right? So a symbol is so a symbol and object are not the same thing. So you would have to still do the shape tween. And then if we go to the end point, so that's fine. Now I wonder if this will allow us to do the mesh on it. No, it doesn't. Okay, so it doesn't let you do it with a drawing object. So essentially, a drawing object and just a shape that you've just created are exactly the same thing for the purposes of shape tween, in terms of this tweening thing, until I can figure out another way to do it. Okay, so next up, I would like to look at classic tween. So classic tween is the old way of doing tweening. So to do this, you need it to be a symbol, so we'll convert to a symbol. And then we'll go to, say, to 30, do a keyframe. And then at the keyframe, we move it to a different place. And then here we can do a classic tween. And that will do similar kind of stuff. But with a classic tween, you do have some different options in your menu here. So if you look at the object, right, you can see at each keyframe, you've got different options. So we can here at the bottom keyframe. So say we wanted it to go from, say, invisible to, we wanted to go from fully visible, fully opaque to fully invisible. So at this point here, we go to color effects, and we go to the alpha channel, and we put it at a 0. So what we'd see if we then run the clip, it becomes invisible through time. And if we check the opacity status at any point, we should be able to see the opacity status of the frame. You can't really do it in span mode, or can you? I think I mean that's the slight issue with the span mode, right? In the past, you would do it like this. You would see, and then you might be able to see the opacity value here. Classic easing. So what you could do as well is you can change how it looks, right? So this is a bit like the sub-selection tool. So say we wanted to do something like this. This is like the sub-selection tool here, right? So this would give it like a, maybe move this over a bit. So you can see it starts off slow and then zooms into nothingness. And what other options do we have with regards to this? So yeah, you also can use the blend modes. You can do quite a lot of stuff with this. And you can go directly into your actions panel as well. So a lot of the stuff that you were able to do before. And orient to path is still there as well. So you can do a rotation. Now just do one. Let's have a look at that. So various different things you can do with that. Now the other way to do it is to do what is now called the motion tween, right? Is this the symbol? Yeah. So we should just have this one symbol 1, yeah. Okay, so the motion tween is kind of different. In general, I think it's better to do it like this. You just do a frame instead of a keyframe, and then you just put the motion tween there. And it will go like a different color like this. And what you'll notice is this is a bit like more modern versions or like other programs like After Effects or Premiere Pro. You know, like even Premiere Pro, say you've got it the clip at a certain point in time, and then you place, and then you move your object around, and it creates that keyframe. Look what happens when I put this, say, over here, right? You see it creates this line here. And for instance, I could make it like a curve, like that. And it will follow the curve. And if we take a look at the options here as well. So these things I think are also new for this version. I've not seen versions like that. Well, I'll have to look into that about how they actually work. But yeah, for instance, like if we move it, so you can move the object like that as well. You can also use this sub-selection tool, which is kind of interesting. The sub-selection tool actually lets you drag the whole animation. So this is where it's sort of like this span concept comes into play. You can like drag the whole animation like that. And we could maybe, move this forward a bit. Could move it like there. It gives you like a more dynamic animation, right? All kinds of different. It's like it gives you like a different sort of approach. I'm still not sure about the layer depth thing, but and you'll notice that when I did that, by the way, the another keyframe was created. Okay, but let's look at what we can actually do on the keyframe, right? So yeah, the sub-selection thing is kind of cool because it does let you do in fact, what you saw in the easing menu, it lets you do this. So you can do this like, so we drag the point there. Could do something like that. Maybe like this. So we look at that. Kind of gives you like slightly different paths. Kind of easily. It's a bit like combining the pen tool. Yeah, I mean that's kind of like a different path, more complex path than we had before. So yeah, we can also do we can orient into path. You can do that with both of them. I guess you can do a lot of different things. Do we have the same sort of options? Same sort of options here. You'll notice when that happens though, that it actually did create keyframes in every single frame. So we might not want that. But yeah, it's certainly worth like looking into what are the values of this, like what value. There's also this scale scans buttons I'm not sure about. But yeah, if we change the alpha value, so we're able to do that, and it's not going to create any more. What about blend? Can we do a filter on it maybe? Adjust the color. Okay. Make it blue. So that transition between the green and the blue is actually is very smooth actually. And is that creating keyframes? It's not creating keyframes. Okay. So yeah, lots of different things we can do with this. I'm going to keep on messing around with Animate because I really like this program and I've always liked it. So I will return another time. Thanks for watching.